Hi, I'm Sherry Damaris and welcome to Macro Magic. And today I have with me Sandra Harris. She's the founder of Echo Lunch Boxes and she's also the author of Say Goodbye to Plastics. Welcome, Sandra. So nice to have you. I ordered actually your lunch boxes years ago for my kids at school when we did our Garden to Plate program, and I was so impressed by what you developed. And I've always wanted to have someone on the show to discuss plastics and how to try to live plastic free, and especially now that our oceans are so polluted with them.
Right, our oceans and our bodies.
Yes, especially drinking out of plastic water bottles all the time and inhaling plastics like in a brand new car and things like that definitely affects your hormones, as we had Neil Barnard on the show recently talk about. How did you get started in all this?
Well, I got started through my kids. I've always been an environmentalist, but when it comes to our kids, I mean, we've got to protect them. And so when my son went to preschool in 2003, and he was just a little guy, and I was getting started packing lunches again, and I was following the cues of the moms with the kids that were a little bit older, sort of what are they packing for lunch? Because I hadn't packed a lunch for a child ever. He was my firstborn, and I hadn't been packing a lunch for myself in a while either. And it was shocking how everything was being packed in plastic. And this was 2003. And I come from a background of investigative journalism. And so I'm a curious observer. And I remember I went to go pick him up. And they said, oh, come on back. He's in the sandbox with the other kids. And they brought me through the lunchroom. And there were some of the teachers cleaning up the mess that had been left by the kids at lunch. I mean, it looked like a cartoon. The garbage cans were just like exploding with mounds of plastic. They couldn't even contain all of the plastic. And that's when a light bulb went off. And I call it in the book my plastic light bulb moment. It was like, my trash, extrapolated across the whole school, all in one room. And it was, just shocking. And I was like, whoa. And then I started to think about the waste of the plastic. And then with my investigative journalism background, I started to dig into the health safety. So that's how I started is, wow, there's got to be something better for my kids. We really don't understand the long-term health ramifications of plastics and all of the estrogen mimicking chemicals, which are so disruptive to our bodies. So that was my portal, my entry port. Everyone is going to enter the plastic-free movement through their own door, but that was my door.
And it's so fascinating to me because in macrobiotic cooking and studying macrobiotic philosophy, we always try to use wood or stainless steel, and it actually affects the taste of the food when it's been in plastic for a long time, and the fumes and, the outgases and things like that. So we are sort of living in a plastic world and, suffering from all the ramifications of that. I know that you have done a lot of work, looking into the oceans and disposal of the plastics in the ocean, which is horrendous. And I think that inspired part of your book. Do you want to talk about a little bit about your experience on the beach?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said, I got into the plastic-free movement through my son. Now, he was only 3 in 2003. He's 20 now, and I had another little one on the way. So it took a while for me to launch Eco Lunchbox, which is my plastic-free company. And then I went on to write this book that we're going to talk about. It wasn't until 2008. And by 2008, I was able to start talking about the environmental aspects of plastic. At first, people were mostly interested in what was closest to home, their own bodies, their body is a temple, their children's bodies. And then you start to think about the body of Mother Earth. Where do we live? And without a healthy planet, it's very difficult, impossible for us as humans and all of the other creatures here on Earth to thrive. So more and more research has come out. At first, when people were hearing about the so-called Great Pacific Garbage Patch north of Hawaii and south of Alaska up in the northern Pacific, they thought it was made up. They just couldn't believe, that, hundreds of millions of tons of plastic were being swirled together by wind and waves and amassed in this big swirling gyres. They thought it was just some sort of an environmental fantasy, sort of like Loch Ness Monster, or something. But more and more research has been done, and not only, is there an accumulation of plastic in what we're calling the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and how it's not actually a garbage patch, it's more like smog. But there are many other gyres in other parts of the world where the plastic is accumulating, and it's washing in through rivers. It's blowing into our oceans. It's purposefully being dumped into our oceans. There are a couple of ways to go about activating people around using less plastic, so less plastic ends up in our ocean. And initially as an investigative journalist, through social media and educational events, Earth Day events, and other eco events, newsletters, articles that I published, I would talk about the statistics. I kind of wanted to scare people into waking up and changing their habits. And I mention these in the book, Say Goodbye to Plastic. For example, by 2050, a study has come out showing that there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just take a moment. More plastic than fish in our oceans. And the research is showing that they estimate that there will be 937 million tons of plastic in our oceans. So that's kind of a wake-up call, but it's hard as a simple human to get our mind around, those big numbers, and to digest that and to personalize it and to activate around it. Another statistic that we commonly hear is that every minute a garbage truck full of plastic ends up in our oceans. And these are scary things, and they do get our attention, but what doesn't really happen when you're hearing those statistics is a connection between the beauty and the bounty of the ocean and ourselves, and how we're all connected. So in the book, I talk about, where is all this plastic coming from? And there's a blame game that often happens. It's like, oh, well, it's this uncontrolled waste in these developing countries. And, if they would just clean up their act, then we could get back on track. Well, here in the United States and in other first world countries, we're the primary users of plastic. We're the ones buying it. We're the ones throwing it away. We're the ones, shipping it. Until recently, we were shipping it to China until they started their national sword policy and no longer accept all of our plastic waste. So now we're shipping it to other countries like Vietnam and Indonesia, and they are burning it and they are losing it in the environment. So we're all interconnected, but typically, even though a lot of the plastic is washing into the ocean through the major rivers like the Mekong and Vietnam and other major rivers in developing countries, they're not the people who have used the plastic. They really need support in developing, waste recovery systems, and we really need support in using less plastic so we don't continue to create this petroleum-based product that does not biodegrade and ends up in our ocean, breaking down into little bits, poisoning our planet and ourselves.
Yeah, and what I love about your work is you give examples of how to live plastic-free. I know banning the straws recently and putting recyclable lunch boxes like yours in schools, but also biodegradable plastic bags in natural food stores now and things like that. But I don't think it's enough to really stop the amount that's being dumped right now in the oceans, which is sad.
Right. So we really have to dial down dramatically as individuals, and it's a drops in the bucket, approach. If I dial it down and my family dials it down and I share with my community and we all start to use less plastic, even though this is such an immense problem, I believe, as an eternal environmental optimist and mother and caretaker of our earth, that we then can affect the commerce, and we can stimulate the development of more plastic-free products. We can motivate our politicians to pass policies so that those who are making plastic and creating single-use disposable plastic items will be responsible of the cost of their products all the way through the end of their life cycle. Whether it's take back or whether it's building into the purchase price of the product, some kind of a method for safe and environmental end of life, safe incineration. I don't know, what that exactly would be. That would be part of our project, working together as a people globally. So it's scary, what's going on. But in the book, I really focus on love. I started this journey out of love for my kids. I want the best, healthiest life for them. And one of the things that I can do is expose them to as little plastic as possible. And the same thing comes for Mother Earth. One of the things that we can do to protect Mother Earth is to reduce our dependence on plastics and safeguard our planet. So I start the book with a description of a beach walk in Northern California, celebrating the abundance of our oceans.
And we have some photos of that. Like we share with the audience. You're walking along the coast, and it's beautiful.
So I'm going to go ahead and read a section from the preface in my book that describes this abundant, beautiful ocean walk, and we're going to see a few pictures from this experience, which I hope lights up my readers' hearts with the possibility of saving our oceans from plastic pollution, and perhaps connects them to a memory that they have of joy and beauty in their own ocean relationship. So I'm starting partway through the preface, and I'm just going to read a few paragraphs. Our plan was to travel a stretch of California rarely seen, to discover the beauty of this protected stretch of unsullied coastline. Our hearts soared when we found black metamorphic rocks lining our path. They were studded with brilliant orange sea stars bigger than our hands, muscular bull kelp, and a tapestry of iridescent seaweed shimmered at our feet. Nubby black mussels blanketed the rocks like chain mail armor, warding us away from the higher, drier routes and into the slippery tide pools that were churning like washing machines with rhythmic swells. There we were greeted by underwater fields of blossoming sea anemones with their turquoise mouths and tentacles ringed by army green polyps, hungrily gaping to the sky in hopes of snaring a passerby. So I'm describing what we're experiencing in this intertidal hike that we're taking. And the intertidal zone is where, the water comes up as the tide rises, but then it goes down, as the tide goes out. So it's this sort of intersection between land and ocean.
That's amazing, Sandra. We need to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to hear a little bit more from your book and then learn about your Echo to Lunch boxes.
Listen, what will make your event simply beautiful? Is it your attire, your decorations, your entertainment? Well, join me, Alicia Simone, as I chat with some amazing vendors and clientele who will share their stories and images and their experiences. Right here on RVN TV, Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. and Wednesday at 4 p.m. It will be simply beautiful. See you then.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Hi, I'm Sherry Damaris, and welcome back to Macro Magic. I have Sandra Harris with me, CEO and founder of Echo Lunchboxes and author of Say Goodbye to Plastics. And she was sharing that her whole motivation was love for her children in terms of creating her book and her company, and also her love for the oceans. And she was sharing a little bit about some of the passages from her book and some beautiful photos of the coast of California. Welcome back, Sandra.
Great to be back. Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about the preface in my book, which is an expression of love for our oceans. And many of you may have heard the quote by Jacques Cousteau, "We protect what we love." And it sounds kind of cliche, but when you really think about, where are we pouring our energy and our efforts and our time and our money, it's into things that we love. And so this book is an invitation for people to wake up to, their love for the environment, or maybe their love of self and their own health, or love of their children's health, or even, love of saving money by not buying so many single-use plastics. Mm-hmm. So with my company, Eco Lunchbox, we have a line of plastic-free food containers. We talk about people, planet, and pocketbook. And people can choose to enter the movement through any door that they choose. There's no right or wrong way to begin to use less plastic. So I'm just going to read a little bit more from the preface, and then we'll talk more about what people can actually do in their own lives to reduce dependence on plastics. So we're having this amazing, abundant experience in the intertidal zone, and then all of a sudden, and this is in a protected national park, a marine sanctuary, pristine, okay? And then all of a sudden, then our attention shifted and our hearts sank. We caught sight of a rainbow made of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, of brightly colored plastic objects in all sizes and shapes that had washed ashore and mounded along the foot of the 200-foot tall cliffs. There was no escaping the reality that our idyllic adventure had hit a dead end. Instead of nature's beauty, we were flanked by mountains of plastic. So for 1 minute we're, all around, immersed in this paradise, and then we are immersed in plastic. The constant rhythm of the Pacific waves marked the closing of our tidal window. And our marine adventure, like a metronome counting down, it reminded us with each incoming swell that the time allotted us on this sliver of land was fast closing. We had to move forward to escape getting trapped because the tide is coming up because we're in this intertidal zone. And so I go on in the book to talk about, here we are, me and my family, and we're looking at these mountains of trash, and we're like, there's no way we're going to get all this out of here. We have like 10 minutes and our hands, that's it. So it can feel really overwhelming when you think about as an individual what you can do. But we did take out, 5 big fisherman's ropes, big buckets, shards of plastic, washed up buoys, broken toothbrushes, broken razors, personal care items. And all of us took out what we could. Was it enough? No. Was it something? Yes. And so that's sort of the spirit of how I'm inviting my readers in my book, Say Goodbye to Plastic, is to just start. And I break the book down into rooms so that people literally can open the door to any room in their house that they choose. Because it does get kind of overwhelming. It's like, where do you start? Like, literally every single thing that we touch from the moment we wake up, and we either use the toilet or our toothbrush, typically is plastic. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit about that walk, and it's sort of a metaphor.
Oh yeah, it was great metaphor. And also just going to the Natural Food Show every year, you come across some really ingenious new products that don't have, reusable razors and toothbrushes, like you said, and pens. And, some of these companies are becoming really innovative with using recyclable materials and, not choosing the triple packaged plastic container, especially of the baby foods and things like that. And to realize that it does leak into your food and it leaks into your water, and you're ingesting that, it's not very good for your hormones. So how else can you start reducing plastics in each of these rooms? I know you can buy bulk, cereal grains and things like that instead of in plastic containers. But what are some other ways that people can reduce plastics?
Yeah. So typically, until the pandemic, the entry point for beginner plastic-free practitioners, I'm going to say, was like bringing your own bag to the grocery store, bringing your own coffee cup to your Starbucks or wherever, and buying bulk, bringing containers to your local natural grocery and buying things by weight instead of in packaging. And typically, people were focused on what they could do outside their homes. So when the pandemic hit, and I had been asked to write this book because of my expertise in plastic like a year and a half ago when we didn't know the pandemic was coming or anything like that. And I was like, oh man, like, now what? Because, a lot of us can't even bring our own bags, certainly not our own coffee cups. And in California, San Francisco Bay Area, where I live, all of the bulk shopping is shut down. And so I thought, maybe this is a bad time, to be publishing this book. People have, bigger issues that they're worried about. And then I sort of calmed down and I'm like, now, wait a minute. The book is divided into rooms in our house. And so what I'm talking about is things that we can do at home. And we still have complete control over what we can do at home. And so what I suggest that readers do, and there's even a chapter in the beginning of the book, how to use this book. It's like, you don't have to read it from front to back. Pick a room, like, for example, the bathroom. Go in there, inventory. Hey, what am I using now? What things are single-use disposable? What might I like to swap? Check the chapter. There are dozens of ideas for every room in my book, Say Goodbye to Plastic. And the subtitle is a survival guide for plastic-free living. So it's a reference book, and in the back there's an index too. So it's designed to be, something that somebody would consult. Certainly I do tell my story, which I hope is inspirational to people in terms of how one person, can start a company and write a book. And, I've sold hundreds of thousands of lunch boxes, and, we have looked at our planet impact and our user community through starting this business on my kitchen table is averting the use and disposal of tens of millions of pieces of trash. Now, if I can do that, I know that you guys can take on a couple of rooms, So then you go into your bathroom and you're like, hey, toothbrush, what are you made out of? Likely it's going to be plastic. A lot of plastic toothbrushes wash up on our ocean shores. How about bamboo? What about that? Would that be a possibility? You look at your toothpaste tube. Well, you're using that up. What about using a paste in a glass jar or chewable tooth tablets? Looking at some of those options, which are explained in the book. Then you go into your shower and you see all these plastic bottles. Do you really need to be using your shampoo in liquid form out of a plastic bottle? How about a shampoo and conditioner bar? How about a razor where you can replace the razor and it's a metal one instead of a single-use disposable? And it just goes on and on and on. So the book is really an invitation to the possibility of the cost savings, the beauty, the joy, and the feel-good of knowing, that we're living consciously and we're making the best choices that we can with what we know now.
That is amazing.
So it's practical, the book, as well as inspirational.
That's so wonderful. It's so great that you created it. Tell us a little bit about your lunch boxes and then how we can reach you to order the book or the lunch box.
Yeah, so as I had said earlier, I have been an investigative journalist. I didn't have a background in business, but when this issue, just stepped up to me and I had my plastic light bulb moment, I'm like, you know what? If my family needs these plastic-free food containers, I bet other people do too. And I hadn't ever really even worked for a business. I didn't know anything about business. But I'm like, I'll just, figure something out and put up a little website, and I'm sure my friends and family would be into it. And so I was launching the business in 2008 when my daughter just started kindergarten, and finally I had a little bit more time. And it just took off like wildfire. There was just so much pent-up demand. So I started in 2008 with the premise being, I'm going to prove it's possible to put to market a line of plastic-free, healthy for people and the planet food containers. Non-toxic, no plastic. People thought I was crazy. They're like, how much granola do you eat over there in California? Because I was living like right next to Berkeley. They thought I was a little wacky. But it just started to organically grow. People were, hearing about the company. And so our lunch boxes are made out of stainless steel, and some of them also have silicone no-leak lids. So they're modular, they're nesting, they store compactly, they're dishwasher safe, and they're non-toxic for people and planet.
And they're beautiful looking. You can see them in the stores. How can people reach you, Sandra, if they want to order your book or if they want to order some lunch boxes?
Yeah, so ecolunchboxes.com is our website, and we're also on Instagram and Facebook if listeners are interested in joining our communities and getting inspired, educated, and activating around plastic-free lifestyle. So ecolunchboxes.com is probably the best spot to start, and we are selling the book there as well as the products. And the book is widely available online as well, both in Kindle format and many other bookstores, independent and otherwise. It's distributed by Penguin Random House. So if you want to go down to your local indie bookstore, they can definitely get it for you as well. So it's Say Goodbye to Plastic, a survival guide for plastic-free living.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I so enjoy your work. Keep it up. We're expecting another book soon from you. And you're just such an inspiration to so many people and so innovative. So we thank you for all your hard work. And I'm going to go home and start looking through each of my rooms and evaluating them according to your book, and hopefully change a lot of things right now. So thank you. Thank you for helping our oceans, which we are so in love with. And look forward to having you back on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here.
Thanks, Sandra. And join us for another episode of Macro Magic.